What is up, my friends? Welcome to this video. We're going to talk about, are we going to actually see this 2020 recession or not? I've been thinking quite a bit about this. We're sitting at, I think, like a 36 or 37% chance of it happening in August 2020 right now. I think that it's an analyst's job to research, to study, to look at data objectively and be able to discern that data and see what it's telling you. And then you go in and you add in psychology and you add in the people that are involved in those markets and how they're feeling and your opinions and all that additional data on top. And you figured out your risk to reward before you get subjective and bias, and you figure it out afterwards. And then you come up with a thesis and you test that thesis and you actually take a market position based on that. That's what I believe a good analyst does, a great analyst. And it just seems like there's a lot of people who aren't willing to do that. And I get why. There's ranging reasons from it's too close to the last one, 2009, it's not that long ago. So many people now want to be right for social clout. So many people now want to chase, clout coupons and clout tokens through calling it, making the big call. They saw that there was the Big Short movie made after, and Michael Burry and several others were able to get the run up on this subprime mortgage, shorting the subprime mortgage market and making a ton of money. And so there's money, there's ego, there's power, there's clout, there's all the stuff, all the vanity stuff that really are metrics that are meaningless. And all that's on the line now to make the call, right? And to be right. There's book deals on the line. There's anchor positions on news networks. Believe me, this is a big game. This is a big game that these guys are playing now. There's viral videos. There's a lot at stake. So there's indicators that are growing. There's a growing list that are pointing to a recession, okay? We see a global slowdown happening. We see countries, Japan, been in negative interest rates since 2016. The Eurozone in negative interest rates, struggling. They just started quantitative easing again today. They decided the ECB, has spoken, and they are going to do more money printing to attempt to fix this problem that they have not been able to dig themselves out of since the early 2000s. We have a lot of new issues on top of that. So it's like the reason why it's so easy for people to say this will be the biggest one yet, this will be the worst one yet, is because there's such a compounding effect happening. We have trade wars. We have the US dollar that could be losing its global reserve status. I mean, the bankers have all but said that that's what they want. We have for the very first time a president of the United States calling for negative interest rates. Here it is right here. So these are adding to it. We have, like I said, a ton of other countries that are struggling. Look at this GDP. We have a global slowdown of GDP. The U.S. is all on its own. Now, is the U.S. all on its own because it's strong still, or because it's the global reserve currency and there's so many other countries that are denoted in the U.S. dollar and have to do business through the U.S. dollar in some sort of way? Is that literally one of the only things propping us up? I say no. But it is a big factor. And between now and 2020, we have a lot going on. We have elections that are going on. Mark my words, we will in the Q1 of 2020 see some sort of change with either a one world currency, or the dollar will be attacked, or it'll go quiet, or it'll go disastrously. I don't know which way it's going to go, but there will be some new solution rolled out, I assume in Q1. Reason why I think that is because the bankers have been talking all through this year about supporting a central bank-backed currency. China is just about done with theirs. We have Libra launching in Q1 of 2020. We have a lot of stuff going on. The SDR is just sitting there primed for the pump. Just put some sort of digital component on it. So we have that going on. We have these yield curve inversions, which on their own might not be that powerful. But you throw in now the president all but begging for negative interest rates. Alan Greenspan saying the other day, it's only a matter of time before the U.S. will see negative interest rates. That's the global reserve currency. We've never had negative interest rates. I don't think the people are going to take too well to that. The spreads between the 3-month and 10-year and 2-year and 10-year Treasury bonds are getting bigger and bigger. Still, the Credit Suisse recession dashboard, this is what it's showing right here. This present day is all boxed out. So we got two neutrals. We've got a lot showing in inflationary or expansionary still, and one showing in recessionary, which is the yield curve. So that's why, I'm not quite sold on it just yet. But the thing is that it ain't going to take much to push Humpty Dumpty off the edge, because there's so much other global things going on. It would just take the trade war continuing through 2020 with no real solution, and tariffs getting cranked up, which China can't go on forever. And they know that they can't. They've already folded and given in and ordered a ton of pork because they're at a beyond epidemic proportion in terms of pork deficiency and pork. They need pork. Okay, I don't know what the word was I was looking for there. The 1% are saving, not spending. We got a ton of people sitting on cash. Warren Buffett sitting on $122 billion in cash. We got, everything from influencers like Gary Vee to real estate moguls like Robert Kiyosaki sitting with cash on the sidelines. Now, this is good and bad. It's good because if some sort of new mystery tech or autonomous vehicles breaks out or space race all of a sudden gets serious, they're going to dump their money into that. Pre-crime tech is something brand new I'm going to be talking about too. But for right now, it represents a threat because it is money sitting on the sidelines. And we've seen a slowdown in art. We've seen a slowdown in exotic cars getting sold and auctions and houses. The MLS is loaded up with, custom fit mansions all throughout the United States. And I don't know about the rest of the world. Okay, so then we talked about this U.S. dollar reserve status at risk because of a ton of things going on. U.S.-China trade wars. We have insider selling happening to the tune of $600 million per day. Fifth straight month, $10 billion. We have negative treasuries happening all over the world. RV sales, which, believe it or not, is actually a big indicator for how discretionary income is being spent in the United States. And there is one RV location that is literally the biggest in Elkhart, Indiana, and that they are accounted for about 65%, and they have fallen by 20% so far this year after a 4% drop last year. So those are all things to look at, but it gets worse. Let's keep looking at this. We have a high amount of auto loans that are 90 days delinquent or more. The U.S. debt, according to some research I'm going to show you, it could be 2,000% of GDP, according to A.B. Bernstein. We're going to go through that. Biggest potential load comes from entitlements, but being pressured from rising levels of federal government debt as well. The warnings about potential debt hazards come as total federal debt, outstanding debt surges to $22.5 trillion. A federal deficit just surpassed $1 trillion, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Okay, national debt is now more than 10x the annual tax receipts. The average credit card interest rate right now for September 11th was 17.61%. Okay, so we've got a lot. We're ahead, but it's not too bad. Okay, so they had us pegged at, the CBO had us pegged at $960 billion for the year. We're now over that, but in comparison to last year, we're about $168 billion ahead of the deficit. We talked about that. Oh, another big bad thing that's going on is we basically have a subprime component to auto sales, which auto financing, which I didn't even really know existed, but apparently it has for a long time and it's gotten worse. So one of the biggest U.S. subprime auto finance companies are verifying less than 3% of borrowers. So they're verifying income on less than 3%, which is beyond awful. That is beyond bubble territory. That means you're going to be dealing with people who have awful FICO scores, awful credit profiles. You're just giving anyone and everyone a car loan. And that reminds us very clearly, if you've been paying attention, of what happened with the subprime mortgage crisis in 2009. It didn't start and happen in 2009. It started well beyond that, well before that. And this is the same shit. I don't know what the total profile makes up in terms of dollars. I haven't looked that deep yet. So it's bundled it into more than $1 billion bonds sold this year, according to Moody's. To compare, GM Financial's AmeriCredit, also subprime auto issuer, verified income on about 68% of loans. So big difference between 68% and 3%. Now, if this gets out of hand and this continues in this effort for, infinite expansion, then this could turn into a problem as well. Canada has their own problems. The number of Canadians who are $200 or less away from financial insolvency every month has climbed to 48%. Now, to be fair, in Q1 it was 46%, which I didn't even know. But if you're hearing this for the first time, 48%, that's almost half the people, are less than $200. That's like a flat tire. That's one disaster away. One mini disaster, not even a big one. 35% of Canadians say interest rate increases would move them towards bankruptcy. Yuck. 54% say they worry about their ability to repay debts, keeping them up at night, cortisol, stress, eating fast food and eating emotionally, living off of stimulation and caffeine drinks to keep you going through the day. This just leads to a disaster. When debt is high, it has a lot broader effect than what people realize. They think, oh, it's just this money problem. No. It affects people very deeply. Okay, we got 12,000 stores that could close in 2019. So far, it's at 8,000 locations that have closed, but to be fair, 3,000 new locations or 3,400 have opened. We see a big pivot into happening into e-commerce, which I've talked about. But let's continue on here of all the indicators and the reasons why we could see a recession. So here's what I wanted to show you here. In his calculations, A.B. Bernstein pulls in debt from a variety of sources and compares it to GDP as follows. 100% of GDP using federal, state, local government debt combined. 150% for households and firms. 450% for financial debt, which carries conceptual issues and risks. Namely that the debt held by financial firms often represents potential in a worst-case scenario involving various derivative instruments that can carry high notional value levels that are unlikely ever to be realized. 27% in trusts for social insurance programs, 484%, which values all the promises from current social income programs, 633%, which tallies up the infinite horizon of obligations for social programs rather than just the traditional 75 years used in computations. So altogether, that's about 2,000% of GDP is the current, let's call it, disaster we're sitting on. You see here the Fed data from the St. Louis Fed. We just tapped over that 1 trillion mark. I think we were there in 2008. Yeah, interesting. So we have clearly surpassed that. Debt levels have come down. To be fair, we do have quarterly taxes due at the end of this month in September. So that should bring these numbers down a little bit, but it's not like they're going to save the day. So those are all the reasons why. Well, actually, I'm leaving out one that I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about, but sure, we'll hit it. There's another reason why we might see recession. Okay, the Democrats today have moved to change the rules so that they could proceed with impeachment proceedings against President Trump. And this is just how crazy people have gotten. They're willing to set aside logic for emotion. Like right now, there's a ton of people who are not listening to my words because I've just triggered something in them. And they're all emotional right now. And they're pretending to listen, but all they're waiting for is for me to say something they don't like so they can pounce on me in the comments section. Just watch. Stand back and watch. But what they haven't looked at is the ramifications or the repercussions of an impeachment. So here's the impeachment that officially started on February 6, 1974 of Richard Nixon. And this was followed by some of the worst market conditions we've ever seen. In comparison, incomparable to the Great Depression and Black Monday and every other horrible thing that has ever happened, including a 2009 financial crisis. It's about the same size. So to impeach a president, we are talking about a financial crisis about the same size as what we saw in 2009. So what that means is that people right now are willing to just throw the economy into the toilet to impeach somebody that they don't like. And there may be great reasons, there might not be. Okay? I think that with impeaching a president, I think that it's not really a logical decision that the market makes. It's based on irrationality, and it's based on what they're being fed from the media. And right now, the media is not in a good place. They're not proving a good track record. They're not proving trustability and authenticity at all. So I think that to move forward on proceedings like this when we don't have all the answers is a joke. Basically the reasoning has been propped up by bad actors in Congress and media that seems to have this insane bias against the president. And you're not realizing what this could mean. So let's measure this drawdown really quick, just to give you, in case you're one of those people. The impeachment process itself ended, the whole thing ended August of 74, but it started in 73. To be fair, we'll grab this piece right here. That is a market drawdown of 39%. Are you willing to give up a 39% market drawdown for this impeachment? That's the question you got to ask yourself, because you're a voter. I'm assuming that you're a taxpayer, you're a voter, right? Here's our 2009. And so if we're going to be fair, that happened in 08 through 09. Let's just grab this. Let's grab the whole thing. 57%. So we're within 20% of what we saw in 2009. The difference being that there's already a ton of countries that are in awful shape right now. Awful shape. Hong Kong's in rough shape. China's in the worst shape it's been. Even though they've been great at hiding infinite expansion for a long time and just printing their way out of messes and hiding GDP through building phantom cities for the last 20 years, China's not in great shape right now. I don't care what anyone says. They need this Silk Road deal. They need this global currency that's pushed out through the PBOC. They need a big, huge deal like that. And so you've got a lot of countries hurting right now. But like I said, it's not going to take much. Remember what I said. It's not going to take much to push Humpty Dumpty over the edge. Okay, we had a government shutdown. Where's our government shutdown? Here we go. This little drawdown here was our government shutdown from last year. If something like that happens now, and it could be that, it could be the US dollar losing its reserve status, it could be us going into negative interest rates, or what if all of that happens? We have a impeachment. We go negative. We have a new digital currency, front-faced, central bank run, new world currency. All those happen at once. We could see something that would make the Great Depression in the 30s look like a fucking cakewalk. Look like the easiest day of school. That's what it would look like. We would see 100, 200, 300% drawdown. Mark my words. We'd see the greatest disaster ever. And that could be triggered by any one of these events or all of them. So let's talk about the future now. Let's talk about the reasons why we might not see a 2020 recession, or for that matter, a recession at all for the foreseeable future. One of the big reasons, and I shot a whole video talking about this, is this next space race, the second space race. And the reason why this one's so big is because it represents trillions of dollars investment to get those things up and going, which the money's already been invested. Blue Origin already has its money. SpaceX and Elon Musk, he's already building the Raptor engines. He'll have 100 of those ready by 2020. Blue Origin has already gotten people to pledge money. We've also got Richard Branson, who's gotten people to pledge 200 to 250K to take a moon mission. We've got 3 billionaires now that are all jockeying for position in space. Some are trying to claim Mars, some are trying to claim the moon. We've got this asteroid that's worth quintillions of dollars, which I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's 700 quintillion, which would represent each person on the planet getting dollar-wise $92 billion each. That's how much is on this asteroid, which is basically an old destroyed core of a planet. And it's got all these minerals, gold, a bunch of other minerals and metals that we need, okay, to continue our space exploration. NASA just announced over 30 missions. They want a moon base by 2028. Next human to land on the moon will be 2024. So I'm just finding it really hard for us to have this 2020 recession as all this is happening, as all this, all this space travel is going to start happening. Now, again, this is just one piece, but we also have We also have Pre-Crime Technologies, which Peter Thiel is pretty deeply involved with a couple of these companies. Not getting a whole lot of public love lately, but I'm writing a piece on that, so I'm not going to go too deep. And you'll be able to read it on the site and get more information. But, billions of dollars now getting dropped into this new, let's call it pre-crime technology, which was rolled out originally for after all the school shootings started happening as a way to stop that. But it's essentially a takeover of the public 911 emergency systems. And, some of it's scary. A lot of the Unit 8200 and ex-Israeli intelligence are involved in these two companies. One is an Israeli-based startup. One is a U.S.-based startup. Peter Thiel is involved in both. Peter Thiel was a voter and a strong supporter of Trump. So I don't know what's going on there. Trump has called on social media to better stop and provide surveillance for future mass shootings. So maybe there's some sort of tie-in there to social media, and Peter Thiel is going to get a nice fat contract. They've already got a $40 million contract through ICE, the immigration service. So we've got that piece. Let's not forget autonomous vehicles and self-driving vehicles, which there's already been money dumped into that. Part of the reason why Uber wanted to do its IPO is because they are making a huge jump into autonomous vehicles, getting away from people having to drive you in those cars all over the place. It would just be autonomous vehicles driving you, which I think would be insanely cool. And you would be able to rent out your car for the day, generate extra income, and you would also be able to sit in the back and do your work while the car is driving you to work. So there's a lot of freed up time. There's a lot of efficiency in this whole hypothetical model of autonomous vehicles. Again, ton of risks with it. Oversight committees and who's going to keep track of this and how do we measure risk and cars crashing and things like that. We're already seeing a ton of that come out with Tesla's auto driving feature. But that market is another billion-dollar market that's being pushed. In all of these markets, things are moving much faster. So this space market is a $1 trillion market now. Whatever comes after trillion, it's going to be into that dollar amount figure very, very quickly. And pre-crime, it's going to be a $1 trillion market within the next 5 years. We've also got autonomous vehicles, I think, will surpass a $1 trillion market in the next 5 years. Those are huge industries. Where do you think all this money sitting on the sidelines is going to get pumped into? And that helps the GDP. That helps these numbers. That helps wash out this recession. We need to expand the total amount being invested and being put back into the system. But also, too, something that people aren't really thinking about is right now the most millionaires ever are being generated every minute of every day through doing stuff online, Shopify stores, whatever it is, Amazon stores. Maybe drug dealers have gotten smarter. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But there's enough ways now that a lot of people are making a lot of money. And you don't think that money gets pumped back into GDP? It's not like you go make $1 million and you figure out how to funnel it out the back door to Belize and you never pay taxes on it. You're paying taxes on that shit. And most of these people have no problem with paying taxes. They don't look at it as big brother and I don't want to pay them shit. They'll pay their fair share. They'll pay their taxes. So we've got a flood of money that's circulating and changing hands within the United States ecosystem that, again, all adds to growth. Because then that person goes, they pay their taxes, they go buy a bigger house, they go buy cars, they go buy toys, they expand and grow, they hire on employees, they hire on staff, right? So that's another metric that I think a lot of people aren't really paying attention to, because if you're not really keeping an eye on these things, then it's hard to see that. I'm still on the fence. Like how I sit, in my opinion, to wrap up this video would be the following. I'm not sure if it's two sides that are against each other in this current government and what seems like to extend to the far reaches of the planet. Is this two sides against each other, good and evil, evil and worse and semi-good? It doesn't really matter, okay? Is this two sides against each other or two sides playing for the same team pretending to be against each other? I think that is a fairly important question to answer because it will dictate some of the action that comes, because there might be some hat tricks coming out. There might be some big drops that come out and shake the very fabric of what we know. And I'm talking about the Epstein case and some of the revelations there. I'm talking about some of the other things that are getting too big to avoid happening through Hollywood and happening through some of the old power structures. That will have an effect. And that might shake things up in a good way or a bad way. But those are variables. Those are like your outliers, your almost black swan type events that you do need to pay attention to. But the rest of it, if you're just looking at data for data's sake, I think it's fairly safe to not be overly committed to the world is going to end, but also hedge that. And I'd start to hedge it. The more data you get, I'd be hedging it more aggressively. And I would hedge it through something like gold, silver, metals, Bitcoin, cash flow businesses. And the reason why, we never had Bitcoin before, which is such a beautiful thing, because don't forget, it has the ability to take big, long decimal point numbers and crunch them down into small, understandable numbers, which I think will have a use in the future once we get above billions and trillions. But also, too, it's really cheap to send a lot of money. You send 40 million for a couple $100. You send 400 million for less than $1,000. There's nothing on the planet that exists, especially for regular people, to move that amount of money. And those will all play an important role in the future. Gold cannot service in that sort of way. It can act as a way to preserve purchasing power, right? And I think Bitcoin will as time goes on. I don't think it does now. But yeah, there's definitely a place for it in your portfolio. And I would be more inclined to go heavier and more aggressive into Bitcoin than I would gold. And the reason why is because Bitcoin has a halving coming up that should hit in May of 2020, which could be right smack dab in the middle of all this mess. And I think that with it being a speculative asset class instead of in a risk asset class instead of gold, which is looked at as a way to preserve purchasing power, I think it has the ability to go more parabolic. Now, we'll find out as time goes on. Maybe a ton of Bitcoin has been accumulated by the bankers, and they're going to play the same game they played on gold and silver for the last 20 years, which was to suppress it and to keep it down. I don't know. But me personally, that's what I'd be doing. And that's how I'd be kind of allocating. And in cash flow businesses, because no matter what, you need cash flow. All right? Anyways, that's all I got for you. Kind of a long video. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the thumbs up, so that this video can get out to more people. I think this topic and what we're talking about here is insanely important. I don't see a lot of people talking about it. I see a lot of people being really biased and opinionated about this and telling you that the world's going to come to an end and that you should this and you should that. I don't think there's a lot of level-headed conversation going on around this. And there should be. We should all be essentially talking about this. And if you're brand new to the channel and you'd like to get more, then click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. If you got something to say, comment below. Be on the lookout. More videos coming soon. Thanks.